Hi guys, welcome back to the Jack Revell show. Today I have Claire with me in the studio, and today we're going to be talking all about Ironman. Now, for those of you that know me quite well, you'll know that I banged on a lot about this year because I did my first half in Dubai earlier in the year, and then did my second, or I suppose first, full Ironman that wasn't technically official. Kind of did my own thing, and a couple of friends of ours made our own one up because of COVID. But through learning about it and sort of getting involved in it, a good friend of mine, Adam, put me in touch with Claire, who has done many more than me and has got a lot more experience than I have in this industry. And I've brought her on today to talk about what it's like to be an amateur athlete in the Ironman space and balancing work, life, training, everything else in between, all in one go. So welcome to the show, Claire.
Oh, thanks very much, Jack. And I will say, first off, massive props to you to going out and just doing an Ironman virtually in the kind of virtual space, insofar as you didn't have an event to go to and attend. I'm seriously impressed by that. That takes some mental fortitude to go out and punish yourself over 226 odd miles over the course of a day. So, yeah.
Thank
Massive
you.
prop. Well done.
Yeah, it was, you know what, I think I said to you this before, we had a call before, but it was, I found myself just in this space of I'd done so much training and so much preparation for something that was just getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, that when we heard that it wasn't going to be happening for another 7 or 8 months, I couldn't just not do something about all that training. I think that's maybe my stubbornness kicking in. So, the fact that we kind of put it together, and a good couple of friends of mine did most of the route planning and everything else. Once we'd done it, we actually realized, oh wow, actually that was quite a lot of effort and quite a lot of work for not just us, but also the other people having to follow us around with water and food and everything else. Because yeah, it's a long day. I think I was on my feet for something 14 hours in total, which was a
Wow.
big day. But
Yeah, excellent. Well done, you.
thank you. I think it's definitely pushed my push my boundaries in terms of like mental capacity on how I
I
can do it.
bet. Yeah.
Hopefully the
Yeah.
next one I do won't be as long and
It'll
as
be easy. Trust me, it'll be easy compared to what you've done previously.
it'll be good. But today I wanted to talk about kind of your journey. And I've heard sort of tidbits from various people about kind of what you've achieved. And first of all, I think it's an amazing achievement. Let's start by just talking to you about kind of where it all started. Where did your love for training triathlons begin?
I think to myself, I must have been quite a strange child, because it started really, really early on. My dad played rugby, and as part of fitness, um, when in his years, and so I guess kind of fitness and sport and was always around me. I think once Dad got over the disappointment of me not being a boy and playing rugby, he very quickly started to encourage me towards swimming and running. So I inevitably became a member of my local swimming club, joined my local athletics club. And over time saw that you could actually start to combine those events. So I guess I'd have probably been about 11 the first time I saw the London Marathon on the television, and there was something about the endurance events, even at the tender age of 11, that really attracted me. Probably helped by the fact I always had an aptitude towards the longer events. I was never the fastest kid in my club, but seemed to have more endurance than a lot, and the sort of toughness, if you like, to kind of attempt the longer events, be that swimming kind of 800-meter events in the pool, or 1500-meter events on the track. I always tended to favour the longer events and do better in those. So at about 11, I told my dad that I wanted to do the London Marathon. Bit of a strange thing for an 11-year-old to want to do, and I guess I didn't really know how far 26.2 miles was either, but I remember my dad explaining it to me in terms I understood. So that will be about as far as running to your granny dots. So I sort of had a sense in my head of how far that was, and that really pricked my interest. And then obviously I was in my local swimming and running club, and became aware of what triathlon was, and we're obviously very posh because I had cable TV, and I started to see some American sports events on the telly at home. My dad was a massive sports fan, would watch anything. Mum always used to joke he'd watch underwater show jumping if it was on, but we watched any sporting event that was on the telly. And on this one occasion we watched Hawaii. I'd have been about 14, and we watched the World Ironman Championships, and I was just blown away by the event. And then at 14 was hell-bent on doing an Ironman one day. And, obviously Dad's then explaining the distance to me, and, you've got to cycle to London, and then you've got to run from home to your granny dots. And so I started to kind of get an idea of the sorts of distances that were involved. And so, yeah, it started very early on.
Very early on. And so just for those listening, let's just clarify, what are the distances of a traditional Ironman? What do you have to do in order to be able to complete one?
So 2.4 miles swimming in old money, or 3.8 kilometers. And then we're talking 112-mile bike ride, or 180 kilometers. And then a 26.2-mile run. So they're traditional marathon distance. Or that's 42 kilometers in new money.
And this is when I explain this.
Out.
It is, yeah, absolutely. When I explain this to people, everyone sort of looks at me and go, "Oh, what? So what? One after the other?" As if it's not a sort of thing. And so, yeah, look, it's a funny distance. Do you know why the distances are that those specific amounts, one after the other?
Well, funnily enough, I do. I guess one of the things that really kind of captured me about Ironman was something around the kind of the history of the event that I find quite interesting. The Ironman event on the island of Hawaii was established 40 odd years ago. I think it was 1978, so a year after I was born, so it's about as old as me. So very old. And it actually started as a combination of three events that were already established on the Hawaiian Islands. And as I understand it, this may well be urban myth, but it started out as one of those pub conversations whereby the early founders of the event were debating whether or not swimmers, cyclists or runners were fitter. So they came up with the idea of combining these three established events on the Hawaiian Islands, and it just so happened, I think it was the Honolulu Marathon, and then obviously there was a cycle event that was 112 miles and a swim that was 2.4 miles, and those three events were combined to establish what we now know as the Ironman distance some 40 odd years ago.
That's brilliant. I love that. It's just the competitive nature of people that compete in these things. I think we can,
exactly,
I can speak for both of us when we say that we're probably quite competitive people, but just, I've heard the story of the kind of the 5 or 6 guys that originally started it, who are like, they literally just did it in a pair of budgie smugglers and then got straight on a bike with zero sort of like tech or any sort of GPS or whatever, and then just chucked on a pair of runners shirtless and then ran the distance.
Yeah.
Seen photos of it, and it almost looks like they were just competing with each other, and whoever was last across the finishing line had to buy the beers or something like that.
Yeah, very much had that feel. And funnily enough, there's a souvenir shop actually in Kona on the Big Island, and they've got the original results for the first ever Hawaii Ironman event. And they're framed on the wall of this souvenir shop, and it is literally handwritten in biro. It's got people's split times on it, and I think this might not be exactly accurate. I think there were around about 12 finishers from kind of 20 starts. So it's pretty crazy, really, to think of where it's come from, and obviously the huge worldwide movement that Ironman triathlon is now. Is barely recognizable from its humble beginnings.
Absolutely. There's always an event popping up every now and again from a different country, and I think there must be at least 150 events a year, if not more.
Yeah.
So how many events have you done to date? What is the number we're on?
So I'm on 14 now, so 14 in total. That is a combination. A majority of those are the Ironman Corporation events, but there's a couple of different types of event I've done as well. Domestically, I've raced the Outlaw events that are Ironman distance here in the UK, and also Challenge Series as well, who are a competitor, if you like, to Ironman Corporation. So in terms of the distance, Ironman distance events, I'm on 14 now.
Amazing.
I'm scheduled to do 2 more this year, but obviously that hasn't happened with COVID, so those events have rolled over into next year, so we'll see what happens come the spring.
And so I want to ask, why do you do what you do?
Yeah, I've often asked myself a similar question. I guess for me, it's always been the Ironman event that has really kind of captured my imagination. And I did race the shorter distances as a younger athlete, and certainly kind of pursued those shorter distance events in my younger years. And that was part of my, I suppose, evolution, if you like, as a triathlete, kind of the way that it was back then. And it's been quite a long triathlon career that I've had. And now Ironman triathlon looks quite different. And you do have people with relatively little experience of triathlon rock up and take on an Ironman as their first event. Again, enormous respect, because I'm not sure I would have been brave enough to have done that in the early part of my triathlon career. But for me, it was a little bit more starting out with the kind of shorter pool-based triathlons, and then developing over time to take on longer and longer distances. But I think my heart was always with the Ironman. It was always the event that I aspired to. And also, interestingly, it's been the distance that I've had the most success over as well. And obviously, you mentioned before, competitive people, we like to be successful in what we do, and the Ironman distance is the distance that has brought me the most success, if you like, in my triathlon career. And I guess that's come relatively late on as well, which is, it's been super fulfilling to be able to post some of my fastest times in fact post my personal best time in my 40s, after such a kind of long triathlon career, has been super fulfilling and super pleasing for me to be able to do that into my 40s. So yeah, success is definitely a driver.
Yeah, and
quite addictive.
I wanted to dive into that actually, because I really love what you just said there about how your success in your personal best, which if I'm right in saying your personal best is 9 hours 53, is that correct?
Yeah, 9 hours 53. Okay. So I did that in Sweden 2 years ago.
Am I right in saying that the world record is something like 7:58 or maybe just
so the world record now they're going under 8 hours, and they're going under 8 hours in Kona now as well, which is phenomenal. That's fairly recent that those boundaries have started to be pushed out. But yeah, the top men are now going under 8 hours.
And that is fantastic, because I think that, for anyone listening to this that doesn't understand what an Ironman is, just Google and have a look at any video that pops up, because you'll see just the sheer distances that is just covered, but also the amount of determination and enthusiasm and focus you need to be able to actually get on and do one is just next level. So for the fact that, Claire, you've done not only 14 of them, but you've also hit personal bests of, sub 10 hours is incredible. I'm in awe of that. I think it's amazing. And yet you've also done your better times sort of, after doing so many. You'd think that you'd sort of lose the enthusiasm or lose the drive to want to continue to get better. So what keeps you so driven and so focused on wanting to keep competing?
I think for me it's been, obviously I sort of I did do an Ironman distance race fairly early on in my triathlon career. So I'd been 24, I think, when I did my first one, and I did it because I was just impatient and I was desperate to do one. and I probably wasn't ready at that point in time to be competitive over the Ironman distance, but I couldn't help myself and was woefully underprepared, but didn't do as badly as I probably should have done from the preparation that I'd done. I hadn't ever ridden my bike over 60 miles, so it was a real sort of voyage of discovery. Obviously, that's a massive step up, and which I know you'll understand, Jack, that of preparation. But I guess I had youth on my side and a bit of natural talent, so I didn't do as badly as I probably should have done off preparation that I hadn't done for my first attempt at the event. And I suppose that gave me an inkling that actually potentially I could do quite well over the Ironman distance, and perhaps achieve a kind of level of success that I hadn't had over the shorter distances. I'd never quite had the speed and pace to be as successful over the shorter distances. So I guess I had a sort of glimmer of, actually maybe if I prepared for this, I could really do quite well. So I then stepped away from Ironman for a period of time. I thought, no, I'm going to come back to this, but I'm going to come back to this really well prepared next time. Which is what I did, and then I set about a program of kind of working over a number of years to start to basically put in the preparation that you need to put in to be successful at Ironman. And then I also realised that, and you all have had some experience of this yourself as well, Jack. You learn so much from the events that you do. And it's just been it's been a really great learning curve, and I've learned something from every race that I've done. Plenty of people, amateurs and professionals, burst onto the scene and have really great success really early, really sort of seemingly come from nowhere and appear on the scene. And that definitely was not my story in Ironman at all. I did reasonably well off really poor preparation in my first one, and then I've basically just chipped away at it, and the times have got faster and faster as I've put in better preparation each time. But it has not been this kind of explosion onto the world of Ironman. It's been hard graft and getting better incrementally over a long period of time. And then it all came together for me on that, I think it must have been Ironman number 12 in Sweden, when I put together that sub 10 time, having been very close to sub 10 on a couple of occasions, but just little things, little wobbles during the race. You'll know from your own experience, it's a long day out in Ironman, and you hit peaks and troughs, and you have moments in the event where you feel fantastic, and you have moments in the event where you think, this is it now, I can't come back from this. The wheels have well and truly dropped off. But somehow you dig a bit deeper and you come out the other side. So it's just been an evolution really, and a learning experience, and something that I've just worked bloody hard at over a long period of time and got incrementally better. So if you can't smash onto the scene with an abundance of natural and God-given talent, you can work bloody hard and get pretty good at it.
Absolutely. The thing that comes to mind is the compound effect. Essentially, if it's mentioned a lot in finance, if you save £1 today, it will be this much tomorrow, and then in 10 years time it will be worth more. It's the same with training, and I find that the more you train, the more your body gets used to the type of training, and you learn little nuances about this equipment's better, or this nutrition's better, or maybe that running style's better, or that bike, whatever it might be, and you sort of tweak and touch up ever so slightly different bits, as you said. And what I find interesting is that it's the tail end of kind of all this work you've done ever since the age of 11, so to speak, when you first started, and now you're producing these PBs that are coming out, and you're doing sub 10s at, at the tail end of all this training you've been doing. And I think a lot of people will look at that and think, oh, you've always been that good, but they don't necessarily see or know or understand what goes into making you that successful. So what does it take for somebody like you, who is an amateur athlete, who has a life, who has family, who has everything else goes, not being paid in any way, shape, or form to
Yeah.
do what you do, what does it take to do and become someone as successful as you in this sport?
Discipline. You need to be able to commit to that hard work, and you need to be able to commit to that and push through even when it's really unrewarding. Like this time of year, you're going out and freezing your cobs off and getting the winter miles in. It's easy to train if you take yourself off to Mallorca, or you take yourself off into the Alps, and you're in a beautiful environment. And it's a bit different when you're dragging yourself out on a Saturday morning and it's pissing down with rain, and the roads are horrendous, and on those grey days it's far harder to push yourself to keep going with that. So discipline, and that's discipline in terms of doing the training week in, week out, and there is no magic bullet either. And I think that's something that and I do a bit of triathlon coaching now as well, and I've done that for a few years now, and people imagine that there is like some kind of magic bullet. You buy the right bike, or you buy the right piece of equipment, or you use this particular nutritional product, and that's going to elevate you. Unfortunately not. There aren't any shortcuts. If there were, I'm sure I'd have found them at some point in the last 20 odd years, and there really isn't. It's just about hard work and tenacity, and just slowly but surely putting those building blocks together. So get the fundamentals right, put the hard work in, and then that's when you start to bring in I suppose more of to coin a popular phrase, to start to bring in those marginal gains. It's when you can start to look at things like aerodynamics that have the potential to offer amazing gains, particularly over the Ironman distance. But unless you have the aerobic engine behind you, that it's not going to pay dividends. So I guess that's the kind of the gloss that comes when you've got the fundamentals right. But yeah, there aren't any shortcuts, and it's really hard work. It's really unglamorous. It's tough and it's gnarly a lot of the time. In terms of how you balance that, I suppose where I'm really fortunate is that other aspects of my life have become very much intertwined with the world of triathlon. So I met my husband through triathlon. We're both triathletes. And so, we both have an understanding of each other's lifestyles, and we train together. We train together in the water. We do a lot of work together in the pool, in the gym, and we do some running and cycling together. But it has to be the right sort of session, because obviously, he's faster and stronger than me, running and cycling at least. But we also, we lift each other up and we motivate one another. So I am very blessed in the sense that I've got someone alongside me who is on the same journey, is on the same path. And we do encourage one another to kind of keep going. And if one of us is having a day when we're really struggling with the motivation, there's nothing motivates you to pull your trainers on if you've just seen that your partner's headed out the door to get their session done. There's nothing makes you feel like a lazy bum if you're on the sofa and they're out there getting the work done. So we're very blessed in that sense. The only thing I will say is that it's sometimes it can be a challenge in navigating the necessities of life when both of you are on this journey, and both of you are putting an equal amount of time into the triathlon journey. You've both done a long day's training. It's the negotiations around who's going to then cook the supper or put a load of washing on to clear the laundry basket, which is full of sweaty bike kit. So it swings and roundabouts having a triathlon partner, but I guess nobody quite understands the journey as well as somebody who is on that same path as you. And I guess perhaps where Duncan and I are quite unique is that our competitive level is very comparable. So we're sort of a similar level in terms of our competitiveness. So never one of us that feels like they're getting, you know, left behind. Obviously, we sometimes one of us will have a good day and the other one, you know, not so good. But for the most part, we're on a similar trajectory, which definitely helps in terms of kind of motivation and keeping us on track.
I love that.
Our kind of circle of friends, inevitably, because we've been involved in the sport for so long, inevitably our social circle has become triathlon people. You know, our greatest friends are, you know, triathlon people. So you become very much immersed in that world. So, and then that obviously happens when you've been involved in the sport for as long as we have. So I can imagine that would be perhaps quite a big challenge to someone just taking up triathlon for the first time, who maybe doesn't have a partner who is immersed in the world in the same way that mine is, or, you know, their kind of social circle isn't based around triathlon as well. So I guess my situation is probably quite unique to that end. Loads of friends joke all the time, oh, you know everybody in triathlon. I'm like, yeah, but that's because we've been doing it for such a long time.
I think that's great that you've got such an incredible network around you, as well as also having a partner that's also into it as much as you. And I think that is important, you know, from a personal point of view. When I started training for my Ironman, it was because I had a friend of mine in South Africa, a guy called Arbery, who'd competed a couple of times, and I'd actually trained with him. I was his training partner in the pool when I was living in South Africa, and really pushed him because I've got a background in swimming, just like yourself. And so I pushed him a lot in that background, and he kind of then taught me a little bit about how to do block training and how to do things like if you go from a swim to a run, and how you need to sort of, you know, measure the different, you know, your heart rate and your nutritional levels, and you can't do too much on one day because it will wipe you out for the next day, and the importance of recovery. There's so many metrics in triathlon, not to mention Ironman. So what are the things that you measure the most? What are the things that really move the needle for you in the right direction to give you those marginal gains you were talking about before?
I mean, obviously I want to do well at what I'm doing. I'm I'm very methodical, and it's funny because I quite often see my triathlon, the things that kind of define me as a triathlete, they are very definitely mirrored in my kind of personal and professional life as well. I find that my approach to my day job is very similar to the way that I approach triathlon. And sometimes I'm conscious of that, and at other times not so much. And I always find it really fascinating when, for instance, I might be having a PPDR at work, and there'll be my line manager will be giving me sort of feedback on my professional life, and I often am quite taken aback at how much it sort of mirrors some of the feedback I get from my coach as well. It's like, I've heard this before. But also I think, you know, you take forward those lessons that you learn from triathlon into your professional life, and you know, I definitely have seen my my performance and my confidence at work will very often kind of track what's happening in my triathlon world, and vice versa. It's really interesting, and you can sort of when things are going well for me from a triathlon perspective, I find that it really helps me, with my focus at work, and feeling kind of confident at work. Obviously it tips the other way as well, so if things aren't going so well, then you can quite easily see that mirrored on the flip side as well. But yeah, I find myself all the time deploying similar strategies in my work life that I've kind of developed, if you like, through triathlon, and probably more that direction than work transferring into triathlon. It tends to be the other way around. But yeah, I do see, I am conscious quite a number of times where I'll see the sort of the tools, if you like, that I've honed as a triathlete, that I'll find myself drawing upon those in kind of work and personal life as well. Definitely, no question.
I think what you said there about focus was really, really awesome, because it gives you a focus. You know, when you train for a race, you know, when you're 6, 8, 10 months out, you've really got to put into work, right? Every day and every week, I've got to do X amount of miles or X amount of Ks on a bike and a pool and on my feet. And there's going to be some days where you have a good run or a good cycle. And there's going to be other days where you've got to go out for 2.5 hours and you've got to run on a heart rate of about 150 BPM. And it might feel like slow for you. And you might be a bit, not bored, but sort of like, oh God, I've got other stuff I could be doing. Or, you know, the mind starts ticking because you're living a life in between. And I think that, as you said yourself, when you reflect those times on your professional life or even just your personal life, you realize that when you put the hard work in over a long amount of time, it does pay off. It does pay off
definitely.
It really builds up to that moment when you pass across the finishing line with a personal best above you and that amazingly heavy red medal that they give you at the end of those races. It makes it all worth it. And I think that a lot of people can learn from the focus of doing endurance sports, because it really does put you into a whole different mindset and allows you to really see things, other areas of your life, in a completely different way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's that ability to break things down as well. Lots of people, and it sounds like you've had similar conversations. People are really overwhelmed when you talk to them about the Ironman distance and the fact that you're doing all that in one day. I mean, nobody stands on the start line of the Ironman thinking, right, today I have to swim 2.4 miles, ride 112 miles, and run 26.2. Even when I get off the bike, I don't think I've got to run 26.2 miles now. I'm sort of breaking that down into much smaller segments.
Thinking about food. Yeah. That's what most people think about.
yeah, there's a lot of that, isn't there? There's a lot of that. But yeah, no, I find for me, when I stand on the start line, I'm only ever focused on what's coming up next. It might be that getting to that first swim buoy without being ducked under the water, and and then once you move on to the latter stages of the event, you're starting to break it down into smaller and smaller segments, really, to allow you to kind of get to that finish line. And you find yourself bargaining, making all sorts of bargains with yourself. Right, I'm going to hang on in there and see how I feel until the 10k marker, and then once I get to the 10k marker, I'll reassess then. And so there's all that sort of bargaining that goes on during the course of an event. And likewise, this year has been a classic example of that. I'm sure all of us in our kind of working and professional lives, there is none of us that haven't been impacted in some way, shape or form by COVID. And most people's jobs have been impacted in some way, shape or form. And it's been a tough year for so many people. And yet, I've found myself drawing quite a lot during the last year on just trying to kind of take it 1 week at a time or 1 month at a time, because all bets are off, aren't they? The kind of forecasting that we do in our professional lives this year has just been totally turned on its head, and it's just been responding from 1 week to the next or 1 month to the next. So and
that's an interesting point, actually. One of the guys I ran this what we call the backyard Ironman we did earlier this year, he said that if he hadn't have lost his job, he wouldn't have been able to train as hard as he did for the race, which is a good way of looking at the time that he had essentially spare to do what he wanted to do. But he said he learned so much about how much training he needed to do, and he said if he'd kept his job, he said he didn't think he would have actually been able to probably complete it, because he just totally underestimated the amount of training that goes into, and the amount of hours you need to do, and the amount of Ks you need to put in just to get yourself to the level where you can even complete it, let alone get a good time. One thing I did want to ask you about, kind of the difference between somebody who is, competing at an Ironman just because they want to say they've done it or just want to push themselves to their absolute limit, versus someone like yourself who's done 14 and qualified 6 times to go to Kona. And actually, just before we go on to that, what does it take to qualify for Kona? It's not just you just don't complete it, do you? Where do you have to fall in the sort of
I mean, as a female athlete, there are a limited number of places available. So you've got your schedule of triathlons around the world, and then there will be a small number of places available at each of those events. So typically, there might be 40 places. At some events, it's a little bit more. At some events, it's a little bit less. But that's in a field of Ironman races that typically are around about 2,000 people, and they'll distribute those across the genders and across the age groups as well. Now, women are less represented in the Ironman events. So typically for a female, you've got to be either first or second in your age group in order to gain a place for Kona. So you need to be regularly on the podium, on the age group podium at these events.
Mental. That is mental.
So be in, out.
So you've qualified 6 times to go to
go
to Hawaii. I mean, that just blows my mind, because again, from someone I've raced in a proper event, and it is mental. As you said, 2,000 people there, and the pressure is real, isn't it?
Yeah.
The pressure is real. So for you to sort of start that race knowing in the back of your head that you've got to finish either first or second, potentially third if there's enough spaces available, to even get yourself to the big island, to Hawaii, to Kona, what goes through your head?
That interestingly is something that I've got better at dealing with. Certainly early part of my triathlon career, my first event, the nerves were a real barrier to me. I sort of really lacked the self-belief that it was within my ability to get those, to finish in those on those podiums, those age group podiums. And obviously I wouldn't say it gets easier, but when you've gained that first qualification, it obviously helps you in the subsequent qualifications. So it doesn't get easier, but I think from a kind of a mental game perspective, then that is one thing that gets easier, because you know that you've done it and you know that it's within your grasp and within your ability. That the mental game certainly gets easier, even if it doesn't physically get easier to qualify. It's still tough. Obviously my preparation and my sort of well-rehearsed toolkit that I use in an event, so that might be everything from the equipment that I use or the nutritional strategy that I use. All of those things I've honed over these 14 Ironman events that I've done. It's very formulaic, it's very methodical, and both my preparation for Ironman events, but also my execution of on the day as well. I'm very I like numbers and I like data, and so I guess I've probably got quite a robotic approach to an Ironman event. I'm quite good at sort of managing my energy as well. I know when I need to go harder, I know when I need to back off, but all of these things I've built over a period of time, and I've learned the hard way in many instances. And I've got it wrong more times than I've got it right, probably, but the times that I get it right are obviously more frequent as I've sort of learnt my craft, if you like, and gained from that experience over a series of events. So going back to your question and the kind of the nerves, the other thing that helps me manage the nerves is what I've come to discover over time is that I might feel crushed with nerves on those start lines, and I've done everything from contemplate staying in the Portaloos and not coming out, to crying, to becoming very withdrawn, to being physically sick. All of these manifestations of nerves I've experienced at one time or another. But what I've also come to realize is the minute the gun goes, I'm fine, and so now I sort of I can basically I know that once I'm into my suit, I'm in the water and I'm on that start line, I know once the gun goes, those nerves just completely go and I'm totally immersed in the task that's in front of me. So I know that the nerves are very short-lived. And what I've also found is that the nerves kick in a lot later as time goes on, and that's something which comes from experience. So I used to start having sleepless nights about 2 weeks out from an Ironman. Now I struggle to sleep the night before an Ironman. That's not unusual because it's a bit like when you have to get up to catch an early flight, isn't it? You're just so paranoid about missing the start. So I might have one disrupted night's sleep, but not the 2 weeks of nightmares about, coming out of the water and not being able to find my bike, or taking my wetsuit off in transition to discover I'm naked underneath. I've had these dreams in the run up to so yeah, that has certainly lessened. But I think it's having confidence in your preparation and confidence in your strategy. And that's what makes all the difference to nerves. I was like absolutely paralyzed with nerves ahead of that first Ironman. And to be perfectly frank, I was right to be nervous because I was woefully underprepared. And I cringe when I think about how little preparation I'd done for that first event. So I had every right to be crippled with nerves. As time goes on, and I know how well and meticulously I prepare for events, then that's what allows me to stand on the start line and be confident that I can deliver that performance. You obviously need a bit of good luck on the day. Everybody needs that. You need to, not fall off or go the wrong way. Or
Absolutely, it definitely helps. If you were to go back to the day when you first ran your first Ironman event, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
I think I'd probably tell myself to do a bit more preparation. But also I think there's an anecdote I've told a few people actually about my very first Ironman event. And the first event that I did was actually in Canada. And you go away to these events in North America, and people just look supreme. They look physically supreme. And I rocked up as this sort of pasty English girl. They're all like tanned and ripped, and I'm just like this slightly scrawny pasty English girl, and I'm sort of standing there. And Jack, you're probably familiar with this. They mark your body up with your numbers for the race. So I'm kind of, all the girls in front of me are like taking off their tracky tops, and like they've got muscles that I don't think even exist on my body, and and they're all getting marked up, and I'm thinking, what am I doing here? I really don't belong here. And I ended up one of these amazing physical specimens. I ended up in a bit of kind of back and forth on the bike. I was sort of passing her on the hills, and then she would come past me on the flats. And then we ended up in the second transition together, and then we got onto the run, and I didn't see her again. And I caught up with her after the race. We just happened to see each other after the race, and recognized each other from the bike course. And I'd obviously been completely in awe of the fact that she just looked so amazing. She was so ripped and tanned. And she said to me, I knew I wouldn't see you on the run. She said, I just looked at you and I thought, you look like someone who could run, and I knew I wouldn't see you on the run. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? All that time I'm sort of really intimidated by the physical condition of this girl, but meanwhile she's looking at me making an assessment of, well, actually that girl looks like she would really be able to run. So I guess what I would learn from that is that it's not about the body work, it's all about the engine. So don't worry too much about that when you're preparing for an Ironman. Keep yourself healthy and well, and take care of the engine. That's the most important thing. It doesn't matter if you're not the most tanned and ripped looking person on the start line, as long as that engine's been well primed.
I love that. That's a really nice lesson to take from that, because I completely agree with you. You do get intimidated, especially in your first race and first few races. You see people there that are just like Mr. Adonis and Mrs. Amazonian woman, and they just look like they're going to scream you. And then but you don't know what their experience is. They might have something that they just look like that. They maybe come from a bodybuilding background or a weightlifting back, and they've just actually slimmed down to be able to do something like an endurance sport. And it's amazing, actually. I see the race I did in Dubai. There was a guy who was running something like his 40th race or something, but he was about 82 years old. He was so, and he was just plodding along. And I think I passed him on my last lap just as he was starting the run. And I just remember thinking to myself, why am I complaining? Why am I complaining?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
This guy's got, he's, and I just had so much respect for him. But I think that just comes back to what we were saying before about the love of the sport, and the love of the community, and the love of just being able to push yourself to your absolute limits, and not ever sort of backing down, thinking, no, that's as good as I've got. You've always got more to give in a different way. And the triathlon sport allows you to be really, really specific about where you can touch this up and tweak that and do that sort of thing. So I think that's amazing.
And I think it's also having an appreciation that, that's what kind of floats my boat as a, very kind of competitive individual. And I'm very driven by performance. And, to me, that it is a big part of what motivates me to kind of drag myself out when it's pissing down with rain and freezing cold. And I want to do well at what I'm doing, but equally, I mean, every time I've done an Ironman event, I'm always keen to go back down to the finish line for what they call Heroes Hour, which is the last hour of the event, where you get people that, the sort of true heroes of the event that have been out there for 16, 17 hours. And like you say, you described there seeing an 80-year-old gentleman completing the event, and it's just so humbling to see people from all different kind of walks of life and athletic backgrounds or no athletic backgrounds, or people that have lost a phenomenal amount of weight, and then the Ironman is like the pinnacle of their weight loss journey. I find that just as inspiring as being around the professional athletes and the top age groupers that I'm lucky enough to spend time with. It's just as inspiring to go down at Heroes Hour and see those people that are combining, look at, they might have a brood of 6 kids at home, or all sorts of different life experiences that they bring to the event. So I guess that's one of the things that is really unique about Ironman as well. There's not many athletic arenas whereby you get the professional athletes and the completers rather than the competitors, and you get all of those people, a whole spectrum, from the completers right through to the professionals, 2,000 of them at different points along that continuum, all racing the same course, and being out there, and okay, they've got different goals, and they'll have a different experience of the day, but you get to share the race course with these people. So it's really phenomenal and really inspiring. And I think that's the thing that has kept me going back to Ironman. It's just the kind of the amazing journeys that you get to witness alongside your own. But that I always find super inspiring and humbling, and just as there's just as much value in completing as there is in competing, and the fact that we get to have those two different strands of Ironman running alongside each other, I think is just something really quite unique and special. And it's probably the kind of atmosphere and around the events and the community around Ironman racing that's probably kept me in it for as long as I have been.
I love that. Claire, I wanted to do a couple of sort of quick fire questions with you that are kind of on various parts of your training, kind of the race and kind of the races you've done themselves. So first one I want to kick it off with is, what's your favorite race you've done?
Am I allowed to have it is a long distance race, but it's not Ironman. Am I allowed to have that?
Of course, you tell me what's your favorite.
It's a race called the Inferno, actually. It's a race that runs in Switzerland. Long distance triathlon, totally unique. It's really, they have really challenging cutoffs. It's the only race I've ever entered where I've been genuinely concerned that I might not make the cutoffs. It's a point-to-point race. And it goes through the mountains in Switzerland and finishes on top of the Schilthorn, which is if you've seen the Bond movie, Her Majesty's Secret Service, it's the where they have the big mountaintop rotating restaurant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's where the race finishes. So the year I did it, I think there were 200 people doing the race. It's amazing, and you basically finish going up the Schilthorn and you have to take 4 cable cars to get back down. So yeah, proper adventure, that one.
That's amazing. And so on the flip side, what is the worst thing that's happened to you when competing in your career?
My worst Ironman experience was probably doing Ironman Switzerland, and I just had a really run of bad luck. I had a couple of punctures on the bike, and then I just got my nutrition got all thrown out, and I had a really bad stomach on the run. And unfortunately for me, the marathon goes through the centre of Zurich, so there's no bushes to run behind in Zurich.
Oh dear.
So I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, but it was a toilet related emergency in super sophisticated Zurich, and I didn't feel very sophisticated at all.
Gosh. I know. I can almost. I don't know how that feels, but I know how the whole feeling of that is. So okay, interestingly, then, what's your favorite piece of tech that you use when doing your races or when training?
Big fan of wetsuit technology. I love swimming. I love swimming open water, and I've been really fortunate to be really well supported by Hoob wetsuits, and I've been involved in some product testing for them. So I get super excited about that, because I'm a bit of a geek and I love kind of science, and sports technology really fascinates me. In recent years, I've done a little bit in the wind tunnel as well. So I'm really interested in aerodynamics and the potential gains that could come from aerodynamics. So I've started to become a bit of an aero geek as well. So I love any of the science that sits behind.
Yeah, I share your love for Hoob. I've invested in them recently. They crowdfunded, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Oh, great stuff. Oh, well. Oh, good. I'll let Dino know.
Yeah, I bought one of their wetsuits for my race, and I swear by it. I think it's great. But I think they're a really good company. They've got a lot of potential for the future.
Great stuff.
What nutrition do you swear by?
Actually, I swear by eating a really good diet and the best quality food and the best sourced food that you can all of the time. I think when it comes to the sort of sports nutrition products, I think they are the sort of that then you're starting to kind of work on the cherry on the cake, if you like. I think unless you're getting the fundamentals right, I think that a lot of people would do well to focus on that part of their diet first, before they start to kind of layer on the specific sports nutrition on top. So be confident in your diet the rest of the time, so what you're eating for breakfast, lunch and dinner, before you start to get too bogged down with the actual nutrition products. And
side questions, that supplements, do you swear by any supplements when you train?
I think there are some supplements that benefit all athletes, and so for me, that kind of fundamentals being a really good fish oil and a vitamin D supplement. Again, I suppose it's a similar approach, really, isn't it? It's kind of getting the fundamentals right. I think other supplements on beyond those, I think everybody would benefit most likely from a really good quality fish oil and vitamin D supplementation. I think other supplements on top of that work for some and not for others. So what works for me might not necessarily work for you. So yeah, fish oils and vitamin D, definitely.
Like it. I think mine would have to be salt tablets.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
sweat a lot. So
Yeah.
one piece of learning I made from Dubai, which was 32 degrees, but by the time we finished the run, was that I must have cramped more times than I can count just doing that half marathon right at the end. I was in bits, and someone said to me at the end, "Did you have any salt tablets?" And I said, I didn't even know what they were. And that was like the biggest learning I took away from that race, because now when I did my full, I didn't cramp once, yet I had salt tablets.
Great stuff. Yeah, no, and if you're a big sweater as well, then definitely. I don't know if you've familiar with precision nutrition.
That's what I use.
Good stuff. I'll be really pleased, because Andy there is a really good old friend of mine from home. We've known each other for years. So
absolutely. You're
using all the right products, Jack.
Absolutely. Maybe you can introduce me to him, and I can get him on to talk about his products.
Yeah, you should do, because
maybe get him on as a sponsor. That'd be great. I'd love to use his products as well as promote his products via the podcast.
Yeah, and actually his kind of business journey and the development of that business has been super exciting and phenomenal. He's worked so hard over so many years. So I can definitely link you up there.
That'd be amazing. We'll ask you, which is the race you really want to do that you haven't done yet?
The Norseman. My husband did it a few years back. So Ironman distance race in Norway. Again, it's point to point, real adventure. And you have to provide your own support crew for that event. And I've crewed for my husband. And so we've got a bit of an agreement that at some point I will go back and do the Norseman, and he'll crew for me. So yeah. And it's another one that finishes up a mountain. So as much as I kind of love all the sort of flat, fast PB courses, I love an adventure and I love being in the mountains. So I can see that more of that type of racing being in my future.
Good stuff. Last question. What do you look forward to most when you finish a race?
Lying down. Ironically, I'm always before the event I'll be fixated on what I'm going to eat after the event, and then I generally find that actually I can't eat very much at all. When I've raced in Hawaii specifically, I always look forward to the after parties, because they're always really great fun. So any event after party, I'm all over it.
Love that. They do put on a good spread in a lot of these places. I've seen some good ones. Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
One last final question, which I think would sum up this nicely, is how has Ironman affected your life since you've started, and how has it kind of shaped you as a person?
Oh my goodness, and just it's so far reaching and in so many ways. I mean, when you consider that I've gained a husband out of it, and but the most amazing lifelong friends that I've met through the sport, and I guess it's taken me all over the world as well. So competing in so many different countries and getting to go to some amazing places that I've probably wouldn't have visited necessarily without triathlon. So it's really, really difficult to pinpoint one thing in particular, but I guess for me it's the people, and it does seem to attract a certain type of person, and obviously we seem to find some commonality really quickly. So I've just made the most amazing friends, and amazing friends from all over the world as well, through triathlon, and it's just so easy to form those relationships because you've got so much that kind of bonds you. So I think it's people that I've met along the way.
Fantastic. And if anyone is listening to this and has been just completely jaw dropped by your immense passion and energy and focus on what is an incredible career of doing such an amazing sport, and they're thinking, I'd love to get involved in this, I'd love to be, the next Claire and do these amazing races, where should they start? Where would you suggest someone who has no idea about this go to start looking?
I would definitely suggest getting in touch with your local triathlon club. So find some like-minded people that can help you and guide you along that journey. You don't need expensive equipment, you don't need carbon fiber bikes, and that can all come later. You just need some energy, some enthusiasm, and some passion, a pair of trainers and a bike. It doesn't matter what type of bike it is when you're first starting out. But yeah, get in touch with your local triathlon club. Don't feel intimidated. That not everybody there is going to be, like the people I described earlier on. They're sort of super ripped, amazing athletic Adonises and Amazonians. There are plenty of people of all kind of shapes and sizes and ages and levels of experience that are getting involved in triathlon. So get in touch with your local triathlon club. If you're not sure how to do that, if you Google British Triathlon, there is a function on the British Triathlon website, find a club, so you can put your postcode in and find out what clubs are operating near you. You can go onto their social media, club social media and club websites to kind of get a feel for what that club's about. But yeah, you'll be welcomed with open arms, I have no doubt.
Amazing. And Claire, one final thing, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, you mentioned you're training at the moment, you're doing some coaching yourself, but it just wants to ask you a question. Where is the best place to find you?
Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Luckily, having a fairly distinctive name, there'll only be one of me. But you can get in touch with me via Twitter and Instagram, and it's just Claire SS Try. So CLAIRESSTRI. And that's my handle on both Twitter and Instagram.
Amazing. I will link all of that in the show notes below, because I think this is going to be something that a lot of people are going to be interested in and also reach out to you on, because I know that when I found love of triathlon, it's funny. I have so many people ask me, "Oh, you've done one now? Is that it?" And I'm like, no. definitely going to do another one. Actually, have you got any COVID dependent? Have you got any you're training for this year?
Yeah, well, I've got my entries from last year have all rolled over into this year. So all things being equal, I'm racing domestically in June, and that is a triathlon up in the Lake District called the Lakesman, which is established over the last couple of years, but is got a growing following. People are responding really well to that event, and it's in a beautiful part of the country that I know really well. So that is one race on the agenda. And then rest of the season, hopefully competing in Holland later on in the year. And I'm torn. If I could get an entry to Ironman Wales again, I'd probably do that at the back end of the season as well. But it's going to be quite tricky getting entries to additional events next year, because so many will have rolled over. And then I'll do some domestic racing as well.
Fantastic. Well, look, I wish you the best of luck. I'm sure you don't need it, but I'm sure you will do very well in all of your races that are coming up. And I look forward to seeing you and compete and following you on social. And thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you sharing your background and your experience.
Not a problem. I can't wait to hear about your first Ironman event. Now you've done your backyard one, but yeah, like I say, real props to you for that, because I'm not sure I could do that.
I'll let you know how it goes. Luckily, I'm doing Nice in June, so I've heard it's one of the
fabulous.
most beautiful cycles of the sort of the series. So I'm hoping it's going to be a nice one.
Yeah, and it's a great city, Nice, as well. I haven't raced it as the Ironman, but have raced it as the old Nice long course triathlon. So yeah, it's beautiful around there.
Fantastic. Good stuff. Claire, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure chatting to you.
Welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you, Jack.